Hey, everybody, welcome back. I see most of you have come over from the last session. Wow, that was great. So happy to have Tiki, and Dan did such a great job with the interview. Thrilled to have that in our summit today. Coming up next, I'd like to first thank our title partner for the event, Channel Factory. We couldn't, I say this many times, we couldn't make these events possible without the partnership of companies like Channel Factory, and they are a title partner. They've been with us for all of 2020, and they also work with us in 2019. Thank you so much. I know you guys have big things on the horizon, and really we appreciate what you've done for us as well. So thank you to that. This session, brand risk and brand suitability. You know, I was going to call it just risk, but Susan said, you know, we should call it brand risk because it sounds a little too financial in the thinking. But it really is, you know, it really is kind of understanding where brands sit. And so my good friend, Lewis Jones, thank you, Lewis, for agreeing to do this. Lewis, really appreciate you helping out here. Take it away, introduce these two fine folks, and let everybody see how much they are superstars.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this session. My two partners in this discussion are Susan Schieckhofer from GroupM and Jed Hartman from Channel Factory. And so what I'd first like to do is let them tell you a little bit more about who they are and what they do in their respective roles. So Susan, go ahead.
Sure. I am the Chief Digital Investment Officer at GroupM in the U.S. And what we do is to manage our overall partnership with many of the digital properties, as you would imagine, Google and Facebook and Condé Nast, et cetera, Channel Factory also being an important partner. Brand safety and suitability is part of what we do from a partnership approach. And we spend a lot of time in terms of what is quality inventory for our clients in the marketplace.
Jed?
I'm Jed Hartman, and I'm the Chief Commercial Officer for Channel Factory. We are a technology and service platform. We operate 100% in the YouTube platform, providing brand suitability, contextual targeting, and performance in the platform for holdcos like GroupM, as well as brands that they represent. And prior to that, I was in the news business for about 20 years, working for some great brands, the Washington Post, Fortune, Time, and CNN Money.
Right. Great. Thank you, guys. So it'll be no surprise to everyone on the webinar that brand safety has become a big and burgeoning issue. In 2017, I think we saw the rise of a lot of adjacencies that didn't seem to make sense, that were actually offensive. In 2018, at the 4A's, at the behest of the heads of the different media agency holding companies, we decided to try and tackle brand safety. What resulted was a brand safety floor that we had done at that time in conjunction with the MRC, as well as our initial attempt to kind of lay out a framework around this idea of brand suitability being focused on not all advertisers are created equal. Everyone has a different appetite for the amount of risk that they might expose themselves to. And we tried to lay out a low, medium, and high context of how suitability might work across a different, against a specific range of different subject areas. At the time, there were 13. It's been revised a bit. There are now 11. And everyone is trying to really coalesce around how do we get to really understand what are the right decisions on a brand by brand basis in terms of their exposure across some sensitive areas. So having said that, we continue to work, but there's this sense that as much as you can do, you'll probably never be 100% safe or suitable. But really, this conversation focuses around how well you can potentially manage that. So I'll start with this question, guys. Why is nailing brand suitability so darn difficult?
So
Susan.
I can start with that. Okay. So brand suitability has actually been in place for a really long time. If you look at linear TV, all the brands have do not air lists, right? Some brands don't want to be in shows that feature violence or sexually suggestive situations. What digital does is add a whole level of volume and complexity to that, because there's so many sources of content. And especially when you look at moving from, let's say, linear television, we're used to easily get adults 18 to 34, and you move into digital, you have to scrutinize what is brand appropriate. And reaching 18 to 34s, for example, on some of the social platforms and video, you may need to make exceptions you wouldn't make in television. Profanity. Is one curse okay? Is two? Is five too many? So there are a lot of decisions that brands need to make about what is suitable with their brands, but it's not usually brand new, because they have had a level of this with their work on television for many years.
Jed, do you have a... Yeah, go ahead.
Agree with everything that Susan said. And if you look at how this relates to UGC, it adds a whole other dimension. When I worked for premium publishers who had their own newsrooms, editors, maybe we're talking 800 journalists and editors producing 500 to 1,000 pieces of content a day. We controlled it on our own platform, and we had our own tagging for advertising, all of that. And we had issues, right? You could, a hotel accidentally runs in a plane crash story, or maybe a consumer electronic brand runs in a story about their competitor or negative about them. It's just, it happened in that environment. So now look at YouTube, and you have tens of millions of creators creating not 500 to 1,000 pieces a day, but there'll be 15,000 new uploads onto YouTube during this panel right now. So the scale is just enormous, and the diversity in content is enormous, which is why it's YouTube is the most vital video platform in the world. But that living, breathing element of it and the vast scale also makes it something that's important to ensure that brands are around the type of content that is right for them, which goes right to what Susan said. With every brand or most brands, just they don't necessarily, what's right for one brand is not right for the other. It's really in the eye of the beholder. Is kids content okay for your brand? And that's not always just that's not a safety thing necessarily. If a car ad is in a cartoon, that's not a safety thing. It's perhaps a waste of money thing. Or in a Hungarian video. And then, as Susan talked about, profanity, how much is too much, or pranks. There's so many different types of content, and every client is different, combined with what I mentioned, that it's so scaled, which makes it so magic, but also creates that arduous task of suitability.
Okay, so then, so let's jump into the supply chain issues surrounding, and certainly you both have different perspectives on that. So, so we've got sort of a vast array of sources from which you can get sort of different kinds of content, and you're trying to marry that up to appropriateness by advertiser. Susan, can you just talk about GroupM and its approach to sort of what's the range of effort or protocols that you might use to sort of control for suitability on a brand by brand basis? And then right after that, Jed, can you talk about, you work within the context of YouTube inventory, which, to your point, 15,000 before we even get done with this conversation. Like, and what combination of machines and humans does it take on your end to sort of manage this whole suitability?
Yeah, so supply chain is something that we have been scrutinizing for years. I think it was 2016 that we started our viewability push. And the goal of that was to make sure that the sites were designed so that, basic display ads, short video actually ran, that people saw it, that it went to humans. And at the same time, we were very much scrutinizing where the type of inventory that was appropriate for our clients. And it's another place where it is up to a client, because the more premium the inventory, whether it's video, display as well, but we want to make sure that we're on properties that are either an extension of previously existing either broadcasters or publishing companies or the social platforms, but it's taking the best of the inventory. We also want to make sure that we're not running on anything that had piracy, anything violent, gambling. So in running the gamut, we scrutinize all the time, and it's why we push third-party measurement, not just for viewability, but also for brand suitability and brand safety. GroupM was the company that worked to make sure that, at the time we started with Moat, but Double Verify, IAS, Open Slate, and now we're working with a lot of companies like Channel Factory and Fixability, Zephyr, et cetera, to make sure that we're taking the best of the available inventory. We also, we implore our teams and our clients to scrutinize where the inventory actually ran. Right? Because there's what you plan for, there's the inclusion list, the exclusion list that we apply, and they are custom by client. But it's also really important to make sure that the ads ran in inventory that you're proud to monetize and that you're proud to have your brand support.
Great, thank you. So Jed, again, in an environment which just continues to add dozens and dozens of pieces of content by the minute. How do you manage that end of it?
Sure. So about 90% of it is done by the machine, is done by our tech platform. And when you're talking about billions of views, tens of millions of creators, and the living, breathing element and the frequency and velocity that content is put on the platform, humans can't catch that. It's just simply not going to happen. You must have a machine that does it. So we rely on our machine in order to read the data. So we'll look at metadata, tags and titles. But some of the issue with that is that the tagging in the creator world is not always ideal, right? And the advertising ecosystem operates in adherence to the IAB categorization. So we have to recategorize, or a machine will recategorize the videos so they make sense to agencies and clients in the IAB, because again, creators don't know that. And then from there, we have to look at audio transcriptions. We have to look at creator data. We look at historic performance data, because yes, it has to be brand suitable and it has to perform, right? There's only so much that brands are always willing to pay for suitability and contextual alignment and protection. So it has to perform as well. We have to do this. It's a global world, so you have to do this in many languages. We have to do it in 39, 40 languages, which is what we do. And the humans will spot check throughout in order to make the tech better. So they're constantly improving the technology. And something interesting is that the machine is very conservative. So the word shoot will be flagged, but perhaps shoot in a sports channel, a human will look at it to see, is it shooting baskets? Okay, that's all right. Let's put that back in. So that could be an area a human touches, but it's 90% the technology platform. And as Susan says, it's customized for each and every advertiser, agency, or campaign for that matter, because everyone has different needs to perform the best and have the most effective suitability for that campaign.
Great, thank you. So, speaking, around conservatism, in trying to sort of match messages with the content that's out there. We are probably in one of the most unique social bubbles that we'll ever be in. So we've got COVID-19, we've got civil unrest around things that are happening throughout the nation. Can you both talk a little bit about the impact of this current day situation? I would imagine that the amount of adjacencies that are available have exploded, but they're not all going to be suitable depending on sort of where any particular client may sit. So between COVID-19 and all the misunderstanding around the pandemic and this issue of Black Lives Matter and the constant feed of news, how do you make those choices? How do you manage that? Like what's going on from your perspective?
Yeah, so from a GroupM perspective, we are spending a lot of time on this exact issue. And even before COVID and before Black Lives Matters and the current Black Lives Matter and protesting and George Floyd, news was getting very hurt in our industry by over application of either exclusion lists or just clients who said, I don't want to go anywhere near news because they felt it was too hard to navigate. And, we have a dedicated global brand safety team led by John Montgomery, Joe Barone in the Americas. They do amazing, awesome work. And together with our investment teams, we spend so much time talking to our clients about not excluding news. And in fact, here's better ways. We understand our clients don't want to be near, COVID death or miracle cure for COVID or, protester violence, but we want to be around the good things that are coming out of the news media. It is important that people support journalism, especially right now, because who's gotten hurt worse than anybody is local news. And we recently did a program with Triple Lift to build a local news PMP so that we could particularly support, because it's very important that people understand what's going on with, local illness for COVID, or here's a place to meet for a local rally to protest against racism in the United States.
Right, and as we've seen, we've seen, there are different places are in different locations are in different places at different times, and that must be unbelievable to manage.
It is, because we also don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater. But we before this meeting, I actually had a meeting with one of our brand safety companies, and they said, due to the work that we've done with our clients and with making sure that we're sort of getting rid of the words that are related to violence and death, but keeping the words that are, proactive activism or, hope for COVID patients. We have actually reduced blocking on news by 85% in the last 2 months, which I think is just positive news for our industry.
Yeah, no, news gets a bad rap. And Jed, you can talk about it from both, your former life perspective in terms of managing news, but also in this fast-paced YouTube environment. Like, how do you get your arms around sort of all of the irregularities that exist?
No, I love hearing what Susan said and what GroupM has been clear about as it relates to news. News is obviously very important to me. I spent so much of my life there and dealt with issues towards the end of when I was in news, towards the end where marketers would just block it. And they'd say, no, it's entertainment and sports for us, no news. And that it was frustrating because it was sort of a blunt force just saying, no news. And technology exists to do it much more laser targeting and scalpel-like. You don't have to say no news. If there's things in the news that aren't appropriate for your particular brand, then we have the ability to protect from those, to eliminate those but while you're still being able to position your brand within news, which is a remarkable place to be because of the scale and the influence and the engagement. And as Susan pointed out, just the importance to the funding of these organizations. And through Channel Factory, we can certainly do that across the YouTube environment. But yeah, terms like COVID, we've all learned so many new terms this year that we never knew existed. Flatten the curve and COVID and others. And the key is if a marketer says, I don't want to be around something that's negative around COVID, you can do that. You can buy, a marketer can position their ads next to perhaps top 10 recipes while you're home on quarantine due to COVID. Like, you don't have to block that if a client would like to block just other elements, death tolls or something, or whatever's right for them. Technology exists to do that. So, that has been a big, I think, change this year because the news cycle has been so jammed. And I think can be instinctive for certain marketers just to say no news. And if that's what they want, we will certainly, we can do that. However, we'll also let them know the type of technology that exists so they don't have to do that and just have one clear block such as that. And you're right that because so many people are home, the inventory is just massive. So you want to be able to make sure you can leverage that inventory appropriately because pricing is favorable, inventory and reach are huge. There's a lot of new content, and you want to be able to do it right. And I also would say is that with Black Lives Matter, what Channel Factory has done is actually create a blacklist. However, it's an inclusion list. It's of Black creators on YouTube. And we'll give this free to our clients. So if a client would like to target to support Black creators on YouTube, then we will give them that for no charge at all to be able to do so to support those creators as well.
Yeah. So I'm just going to, you began to touch on this. So I'm looking at the Q&A. I got two questions that I'm going to read to you guys that are somewhat related, and maybe you can espouse a little bit more off the discussion that we're currently having. First question is, what is the approach for discussing discrimination in brand suitability, i.e. keyword blocking LGBT or Black Lives Matter, and how can agencies best advise, educate their brands on this sensitive area? And the other one was, what's wrong with advertising on negative or death-related news? Why shouldn't advertisers support the reality of what's taking place around us?
Yeah, no, they're really good questions. So it is not up to us as the agency to make these decisions. What we do is to advise and guide our clients, but it's really up to the individual clients. And we do have some clients who say, especially in the area of politics, because for a while, nobody wanted to go near politics. But then we have some clients that are like, you know what, I want to be around all of it because that's what people are interested, that's what they're watching. And that's fine. Because that is what the clients feel is best for their brand. But for a lot of the clients, it's just that they wanted to be around positive messaging, solution-oriented news versus just, this is, everything that's going on that's terrible in the world. It's like, okay, this is terrible, but here's some solutions. And that is the client's prerogative. In terms of LGBT, what we are doing at one of our agencies is we built a very specific PMP where we're completely leaning in. We also reevaluated all of our inclusion lists to make sure that we weren't hurting websites that were covering all of the subjects because, it is really important for clients to understand that when they suppress, they especially hurt LGBT or it could be minority-owned websites. And that's our job, is to educate our clients. And if anything, to build a way to lean in, like Jed just referred to what Channel Factory is doing with Black influencers. It's not just a question of making sure they don't suppress, but what do we lean into? Because we want to make sure that we're supporting all communities.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Jed, you have a thought?
Well, the question about what's wrong with advertisers being opposite death, or as that's the reality of life, what I would say to that is that, well, it's up to the marketer, and we wouldn't tell them we don't think you should be around this type of content. We tell them what we're capable of doing, and advise them of how nuanced and how laser hyper targeting you can get. There's one thing of avoiding content that you don't think is right for your message, which is very important. Consumers will take it out on you if you're opposite content that is not appropriate for your brand. I think the Brand Safety Institute says that that consumers said that they will spend 80% less on a goods or services if it's in poor content for that brand. Oppositely, if you align with the right content, it can boost your performance by 50%. So this is important stuff to get right. We just explain to the advertiser, the agency, what our capabilities are, and make sure they understand what you really can do with a great platform to get the right type of content and avoid the wrong type of content for your brand. So I'm not saying there's something right or wrong with any of this content. It's really up to the brand, and every product and campaign is different, what makes sense for them. And the last thing I'll say on that is, it's really important, especially on something like YouTube, to get this right. In linear TV, you have pods of many advertisers, many brands within a 30-minute TV show. On YouTube, you have a 6, 15, or 30-second ad tied to, with a 1-to-1 ratio, to like a 30-second or 1-minute video. So there's a real attachment of that ad to that content, almost like now a word from our sponsor. And the viewer doesn't really know what ad serving is and targeting and all of this. They don't know how the system works. So there's an alignment between that marketer, the brand, and the video that's much more emotional, which is why the platform works so great. But it's also why this is something that has to be paid attention to due to that relationship.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys. So I'm getting the flag here that we are running low on time, and Mr. Rob Brasco, there you are. Hi.
Yeah, here I am. Great job, guys. I remember when Susan just kind of pointed at you when John and Joe first started talking about this idea of the risk barometer, right? And kind of thinking about how clients are going to think about it. This is such an important discussion, right? To think about, like, how do we explain to our customers where the right places they want to be, having the right tools, as Jed outlined, but also having them understand what makes sense to them. So yeah, and it's ever evolving, right? Because that barometer changes every day. And this is kind of a good moment to give a good shout out. I know there's people watching this, to our dear friend Ari, who passed now 6 years ago. This event we really wouldn't have this event if it wasn't for Ari. So I have a moment now with you on the screen to kind of acknowledge that. Probably the best panel session ever of anyone's life was Ari Blumen in the first Brand Safety Summit. So now's a good time to shout out. He and Vivek got into an argument about what viewability was and wasn't, and it was just amazing. Anyway, so he's missed, of course, and but anytime we get a chance to talk about him, right? Guys, thank you. Yeah, absolutely.
Can I just say one thing? I want to just say one thing before you close.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many clients are asking, how do we better support Black-owned media? It is a real sea change, and it is a wonderful thing.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Glad to hear it.
Glad to hear it, for sure. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Jed. Thank you, Channel Factory.
Thank you,
Lewis.
Yep. My pleasure.
Yeah.
Great job, Jed and Susan. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lewis. Thank you. Bye, Jed.
Bye-bye.
And we'll see you on the Slack.